Hello and welcome to Wait, It Gets Better, the Improvisational Storytelling Podcast, where every week we choose one of our podcast presenters and we vote them off the island and we render down their essence and turn it into a valuable story that we can use this week. Well, Reed, it's just you and I this week. Too bad for Timothy. I'm, of course, Levi.
I'm Reed.
And we are here to tell you a story. No one was harmed in the making of this episode, as far as I can tell. I had Hero.
I have Hero's Sidekick.
Well, this is perfect because that's good. I should start, you said? I think we said before we started the recording. Okay, great. The hero's name is Nathan or Nathaniel Holiday is his last name. And his father is Santa Claus. No. He is a detective in a kind of a futuristic, cyberpunkish kind of city. This city spans roughly the East Coast. So like the entire East Coast, with sort of dwindling natural resources. Sticking as close to water as possible has really been the thing. Surprisingly, it wasn't the water. It was the glaciers didn't melt. They in fact started to freeze, which started to drop the water, the ocean levels even more. Anyways, regardless, how we got to this place isn't the answer. The answer is the story takes place in a sort of futuristic city with many augmentations, many futuristic systems, flying ships. Think like a Cyberpunk 2077, maybe the grittiness of like Blade Runner thrown in. Not quite as futuristic and beautiful as Star Trek or Star Wars even. Still kind of struggling to adopt things like robots and fake people, and so a real kind of gritty system. You tracking with me so far, Reed?
Absolutely.
Okay. Nathan, or Nathaniel Holiday, is a detective. Can you guys tell that I watched Blade Runner recently? He's a detective. And the reason why he's the lead character of our story is because it's not like he's the only detective, but he is really unique in the case that he is a blank, as they say. He doesn't possess the sort of ready mutation that allows for easy augmentation. So he doesn't have any artificial eyes or feet or he's not connected to the internet via a chip in his brain. He's just been kind of robbed of the whole entire experience, as it were. But that he has kind of pushed himself forward in order to still be a sort of competent person, right? And so because of that, he's not distrustful of technology, but it's never worked for him his whole life. Even to the fact that because he isn't easily augmented, everyone gets a second skin put on their hands so that when they sort of touch things, it recognizes them, Mm-hmm. He doesn't have that. He has to sort of carry around a little key fob to be able to open his doors, where everyone else the machine just recognizes him. When he walks towards his car, he actually has to push the button and get it to open up himself. And he's not distrustful of it. It just doesn't work for him. And it's 10% of the population or something that are called blanks, basically. There's something about their genetic code that just doesn't allow for easy augmentation. It just, and people thought it was racist for a while, but it turned out, no, it wasn't. It wasn't. No, corporations were taking advantage. They take advantage of different races for completely other reasons, And so he is a homicide detective who sort of is assigned his quadrant. It's the area that he's assigned to is the size of New York City. And it's just him and 5 other people because of the size of this sort of string of cities and community that exists right here on the ocean. That's just kind of how it works. So he enjoys kind of doing things that most people can't do, or doing things that people could do if they wanted, but most people won't do because most people can connect to virtual reality and stuff. So he enjoys reading. He likes the idea of figuring things out based purely on evidence, on being observing what's around instead of calling in the satellite to track all the images. He looks for footprints and tries to do Sherlock Holmesy stuff. He's not necessarily good at it. He's just the thing I'm imagining that puts him into the hero spot and lets him sort of rise to the occasion. This is a kind of rise to the occasion kind of hero. Not necessarily your kind of, this is more of a Frodo style hero and not necessarily a sort of an Aragorn. Aragorn like is strong enough to be the hero, where Frodo was just like in the place to be the hero, and therefore Frodo was a hero. Does that make sense to you, Reed?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That's the kind of hero that Nathan is. And it kind of falls in his lap as various machine systems just kind of don't see him and observe him at all. They recognize him as an empty space, right? But they've gotten just so used to parsing out a person's identity based on their neural chip, based on their, cholesterol counting chip, based on their weight chip, based on their eye implants, that it kind of creates this, he just creates this void around him. And it's on one of these such occasions where he is, it's raining. There's some neon lights and he's smoking a cigarette and he pops his collar and tries to like stop the rain. It's artificial rain, right? Generated by harvesting large, vast amount of water and putting it into these sort of artificial clouds. But it's rain nonetheless. It kind of smells slightly of chlorine. It also, there's a company that does this and it cleans the buildings and everything, washes away the graffiti. Well, it does its best to wash away the graffiti, and the government is kind of on a contract with this corporation for the next 200 years. So they're starting to feel the pain now because it washes away all the indicator lines and everything, which is kind of curious because this company has a sub-corporation part of it that repaints traffic lines. So it's kind of a nice thing for them.
Yeah.
But anyways, he's the scene starts where he is at this I would say kind of like my brain is saying like an old building, like an old church or like an old warehouse. Mm-hmm. And he's trying to, maybe he's quoting Shakespeare to himself, or he's quoting some part of Shakespeare to himself as he's trying to sort of figure out what happened here. There's kind of like maybe been like a mass homicide, maybe looks like a gang bust, a gang war fight, and he's kind of, you don't want to start a gang war when people have mechs, and missiles and possibly even nukes. Mm-hmm. So he's like really wanting to get this figured out as fast as possible so that a gang doesn't get blamed, and then a gang retaliates because it got blamed, and then that's how bad things start. So I imagine what's happening is he's sitting here, and the corners are there and everything there, and then the ship lands, right, and out comes the chief with the hero's sidekick, and he says, "Hey, Holiday." And Holiday kind of turns and looks. This isn't a screenplay podcast. This is just a normal podcast.
Hey, I was gonna work the sidekick in maybe a little differently than that.
Okay, no, do it.
But her name's JoJo, and the sidekick, the hero's really one of his first really heroic acts was rescuing her. She was a street orphan. This urbanized society with just sprawling neighborhood after neighborhood, and she was orphaned, and there are lots of people that would fall through the cracks.
Oh yeah,
in this system, and she was basically a feral youth. She learned to survive. She learned to be quick-witted and observant about what was around her. She knows how to not be noticed, because being noticed oftentimes draws people that want to use her wrongly, so to speak. There'd be a lot of people in her life that would be surprised to find that she's female because she dressed and stuffed her hair up into caps and went by Joe. But she was eventually conscripted into a crime syndicate, so to speak, and she was gifted with edged weapons. She tended to have various blades secreted at different places around her body, and she had a real nifty, very easy to conceal hand weapon that was an energy weapon.
Okay.
And she was a deadly shot with this thing. And you didn't want to mess with JoJo, but she fell on the wrong side of some street toughs, and she managed to outsmart him and get away, but they were connected with this crime boss, and he realized that, this gal had some skills. And so he managed to, conscript her, so to speak. And it was a kind of a thing thing where she had a kind of a level of belonging, but it was, the terror that she experienced by, getting wrong with the boss was scarcely just ever so slightly better than the terror that she felt by being on her own and feeling like she was prey for any number of the predatory lowlifes around. And this this crime syndicate caught the attention of Nathaniel because he was working a case and some things started pointing and he started seeing that there was some organized crime activity involved in one of his cases, and he came across JoJo and realizing that she probably had information that he wanted, and she something about him. She realized that he wasn't a con. He wasn't working an angle.
Wasn't on the take either.
And it surprised her that this guy was actually honest and wasn't working a slide, like she would say. He's not working a slide. And he just she kind of adopted him. At first, he tried to find agencies or authorities, and she was having none of that. He would drop her off someplace, and the next thing he would know she was shadowing him again. And but he discovered that she was a very valuable asset and very observant, and he could walk into a situation and she would kind of disappear into the background, but she would learn things.
Right.
And so she picked up a new career, being Holiday's gopher.
So maybe he is getting introduced to his new partner, but not his sidekick.
Yeah.
So his sidekick is someone who's actually his sidekick, where his partner is someone who maybe part of the story is kind of assigned to him in order to keep him down.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I can see that.
And it's been kind of a long line. I don't want to say that he's been killing off his partners, because that makes him sound kind of psychotic. But it could be a sort of thing where he kind of pushes them to a place where his couple previous partners have just kind of ditched him and said, nah, I'm not going in there, or I'm not going to follow that lead. And maybe that's kind of been that was what happened with the previous, because I kind of imagine what's her name? JoJo. She just recently started to do this following and helping out.
Yeah.
And that's what happened to his last partner. His last partner basically told him that this syndicate that JoJo works for, basically I'm working for them too, and you're not undermining our business, and I've been ordered to end your life. And then Nathan ends up killing the guy, and JoJo realizes, oh my gosh, this guy's for real. He's an actually good person. He's not like all the rest,
right?
And then now Nathan's kind of under constant and continual internal affairs investigations,
right? Because
he killed another officer.
Yeah, and he
has evidence. I mean, the evidence is there. The evidence was that was shown that this other officer was trying to kill him, but it kind of puts everyone on edge. So it's he has the graces of the people who are just above. So it's there's Nathan, and then the police chiefs and an internal affairs staff, and those all people hate him. But the people right above are oh yeah, look at you doing what's right and doing good. So they can't fire him or get rid of him because of whatever. So they're kind of now just giving him another partner to kind of watch over him.
Yeah. And of course, JoJo, if this new partner looks like he's on the slide, as she would say, she'll have none of it.
Right.
Because she's real protective of Nathan.
Right. And he keeps telling her, she's well, I'll be your partner. And he's well, you got to go to the police academy. And she's blah, 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 blah. She doesn't really want to go to the police academy. She'd prefer just to kind of use her. And so he gets information from her, and then she goes and comes back and tells him. And then he finds out that some poor guy was brutalized, who gave up the information. And he's JoJo, you can't do that.
Yeah.
You can't just beat a guy to a pulp and then get the information from him. That's not how it works. It's this isn't permissible. I can't use this in court.
Well, it was his billy club.
Yeah, exactly.
He shouldn't have waved that thing around if he didn't want to get it taken away and smacked upside the head with it.
Yeah, exactly.
Besides, I didn't like his attitude.
Yeah. That's cool. I like that dynamic duo. I'm trying to think of what our sort of overarching story is going to be. And I mean, there's any number of ways that this could go down.
Oh, I just love the classic, Gotham City where you have, the corruption from inside and the corruption from outside the law, so to speak. The, the Cape Crusader, Nathan and Jojo keep following the leads, and not that he plans a big vendetta to like clean up City Hall, but if he finds people on the take,
if the shoe fits.
Yeah. And I think that one of the elements is going to have to happen. There's got to be a mechanism for informing the populace. There's got to be some underground media, and I think that there's a reporter that's involved that is sort of Nathan's pipeline to make sure the word gets out and covers his back, because if he starts stepping on toes that are a little too high up, it could be real.
Right. Maybe it's something that kind of like he's going after this. Maybe he gets moved off of homicide and gets moved to organized crime, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe he was in organized crime. Maybe he was in organized crime. And so he gets called to this scene, right? And he's just following the organized crime thing. But then he tracks down this warehouse, right? This other warehouse that, apparently is where the people who did all this shooting here went. And he goes and he finds just like tons of vats of the additive that the corporation adds into the rain.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, oh, look at that. They stole like 100 tons of this stuff. I better tell them. And so then he just kind of goes into the corporation, gets a meeting with somebody, talks to someone. They hurriedly leave the room. The CEO of this company comes in and he's telling them, I found all these in this warehouse. And the guy kind of is like feigning like terror, like, I'm so sorry, like as if he was getting shaken down.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And Nathan is like, what? And he finds out that's like, there's like a deal. There's like a hidden deal somewhere.
Oh.
And so he like figures out the organized crime thing and finds out that these criminals are like small game compared to whatever it is this corporation is trying to do.
Yep.
And that the quote unquote organized crime were really there just to kind of be the muscle for whatever it is this other thing is trying to happen. And he just kind of just not follows every lead, but just sort of walks it all back, and kind of gets to this place that all of a sudden it's like everyone is guilty.
Yeah.
I
thought of that movie, The Informant, where the guy is like, is doing undercover for the FBI on Archer Daniels Midland and the whole big agribusiness worldwide
price fixing stuff.
Yeah. And it's like, so, and they end up nailing him for some just petty little graft and corruption when, he says, wait a minute, isn't the real issue here the fact that these guys are stealing millions and like from everybody worldwide? Isn't that a much bigger story here? And it was kind of cute how innocent he was when he was just crooked as they come,
Yeah, exactly. Because he was just like a compulsive liar.
Right. But here you've got like these, like JoJo's old gang, they're just into their penny ante little manipulations and protection rackets and the little things that they do. But, they have connections in order to function with, they have to pay off certain officials and things like that to make the cops turn a blind eye. But Holiday doesn't.
Yeah, exactly. And he just kind of makes his way forward regardless of like what they're trying to do. And I'm not trying to like shoot down technology or anything, but I find it really funny. Okay, what I keep thinking about when I'm thinking about this is in Wheel of Time. This is big spoilers for Wheel of Time. So fast forward like 20 seconds if you haven't read Wheel of Time. But in Wheel of Time, when the Aes Sedais are figuring about the ADOMs, like the things that you can clamp onto Chandler's necks and make them, and one of the whites, the logical ones, go, well, we've never heard of these, so logically there can only be 2 or 3, a max of 10 of these in existence.
Yeah.
It's like I want the way that Nathan moves forward to be so confounding that they can't outthink him.
Yeah.
Because they're literally thinking past him.
Right.
He comes into their offices and he doesn't make a bold statement about, I'm going to stop you. He just says, Well, we'll follow it wherever, the game's afoot. We'll track it down. Like, and they're like, guy without access to military grade hardware is saying this to us. It's like, okay, but he like thinks logically and continues to move forward. So it's not that crazy to think that he would outbest you.
Yeah.
And so then they get to just trying to kill him, towards the last third of the book, they just end up are like, okay, that's it. We're just trying to kill him, and then that's where JoJo comes in and just kind of doesn't let them kill him. Mm-hmm. And then his connections with the kind of underground reporters, as he dismantles their systems and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. It's kind of a simple story. It doesn't really have a huge hook to it. And I feel kind of bad about that.
I like these people though. I really like Nathaniel. Yeah. He's like a real solid good guy. You could really build good stories around him, and it would be episodic where you'd this case and that case, but the theme, the background of it is the strings, coming from City Hall, so to speak.
Right.
Like,
and maybe he's like constantly making references to how like this is how they did it in Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah.
And like half of the time it works out to be what he said it did, to have it be correct. And those are the half times where it really counts.
Yep.
The other half of the times it's kind of mildly embarrassing. But then other times, just to kind of prove that like time is a wheel that repeats on itself. And that what was right, what was the correct answer 100 years ago is pretty close to being the correct answer today. And will pretty much be the correct answer in 100 years from now.
Yeah.
You can always follow a guy by his footsteps. You can walk backwards in shoes to make it look like you're walking the other way. Like there are sort of tried and true methods for doing anything. And criminals are bound to mess up and fail. That's kind of even if you think that there are criminals in life that have succeeded, about them.
Yep.
So in that essence, they have failed. Anyways, kind of a light story for today.
Yeah.
What's the end of the story look like? Does he dismantle all the corporations? Or is he just kind of like the facilitator to sort of a new tomorrow?
I think it's a case by case thing, and he has some victories and
okay, so maybe like a Sherlock Holmes like mystery by mystery thing. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And some bad guys get theirs and they send their assassins to take him out. And of course they dismiss the kind of the raggedy street urchin type, underestimate to your peril.
Yeah.
Sidekick.
Yeah. Well, they only miss her once.
Yep.
Yeah. And she doesn't miss. Anyways, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us for this episode of Wait, It Gets Better, the Improvisational Storytelling Podcast, where every week we combine story elements. We're starting another episode, Reed. Anyways, if you like this episode and you would like to hear more, some more that have a little bit more unique ideas, this one was a little bit of a flop on my end. I like these characters a lot, and I like what Reed said about episodic systems. It would make a lot of sense to do individual stories with these characters instead of sort of just one and done kind of system. But if you would like to maybe hear us make a different story with Nathan or Nathaniel and JoJo, I would say just email us at waititgetsbettercast@gmail.com or add us on Twitter at @getsbettercast. If you message me at either of those places and say, I want to hear another story of Nathan and JoJo, I will make it. I promise. We'll make it. And it'll be much more detailed, and we'll take this world that we've created and we'll apply it to a specific story. We'll do it. And if you didn't like this story and you would like us to make something a little bit more detail-oriented, maybe a little bit more systematically created, something with like a beginning, a middle, and an end, I would say just wait. It gets better.